Today I'm going to demo my latest GitHub project, user settings for Sitecore. Now, I built this module to make it easier to track custom visitor data and personalize the experience without having to jump through a lot of hoops, setting up your own custom personalization rules, setting up your own custom facets. I wanted to make it easy for a content author to go capture data and then personalize on it. And although it has a pretty robust API as well as a REST API if you wanted to wire into it using JavaScript, I created an out-of-the-box form submit action that allows you to instantly make any piece of data you collect in your form personalizable. But I also included a XXA component that I'm calling the preferences list, which allows you to specify a bunch of items that when clicked will track a custom piece of user data that could be used to personalize it. So to just demo this, I've actually installed this module on top of Habitat Home, and I've added a little component to the bottom asking what are you most interested in, and I put 3 different options. I'll show you how we can configure this in the experience editor so you can control what kind of setting it sets and where it gets stored and all of that. But for demonstration purposes, I've set it up so that if I'm interested in cooking, I can use that as a personalization rule, which I'll show you as well to customize the experience. So if I click this, it will just hide it, but you can do this a couple different ways. You can actually have it take you to a target URL if that's what you're looking to do. And I can also see having that whole module be wired into like a modal dialog, and then when you click on it, it just closes it. But if I refresh, you can see it has personalized this top banner here to use a completely different carousel. And this is based on cooking. The other thing I'll show you is I actually built a form submit action, which I've wired into the out-of-the-box Habitat Health trainer finder form. And what I've done is I've added another personal rule to the homepage that if I select cardio, and we can go through, and what this custom submit action does, it actually will track every single question. So if I want to have a different personalization rule for each of these questions, I'm able to do that. So if I want to target people who answered that they want low intensity workouts, we could do that. But I specified cardio because I actually have already set up a homepage personalization rule based on that. So now that I've gone through that, if I go back home, we can see I've taken the second promo and I've personalized it, and I'll show you the personalization rule for that as well. So to show you, so I actually have the experience editor open, so we can hide that and scroll to the bottom. And this is actually our preferences list component, which is actually a composite component. It's built very similar to the carousel. I've actually, the component properties for each of these items, which we can see as a preferences list item, is actually based on the same template as the slide. So you can actually create your own versions. These are all support variants and things like that. But there's a little button you can press, and this is the value to set. So when this is when this is clicked, this is the value that gets set into that preference. And for that, you can actually put into the personalization rule, and I'll show you how that works a little bit later. If I wanted, instead of just closing it, to just take you to a certain URL, it'd be able to do that. All right. The other thing I wanted to show you is at the top level, at the preferences list component, there's another configure button. And here I can specify my area. So the nice thing about user settings is you can organize all different types of settings into different areas. It's actually implemented as a dictionary of dictionaries, and this area is the top level key. And then so within the preferences, I can have multiple settings. So in this case, for the preferences list, I'm using visitor intent. So if I wanted to personalize, I would say if the user has within their area, their preferences area, a key of visitor intent equal to any of those values that I just showed you, you can set up a simple rule that defines that. And then the thank you message is configured here. The other thing you can do is you can toggle whether or not you wanted to hide this whole component if that value is already set. So you can only show this component if nobody's ever clicked it. So that's good if you're trying to show this just once until someone specifies it. And that's it. I mean, this works just like a carousel. So you'll actually even note it has all the different same variants are supported by the carousel as well. If I go back up, the preferences list, I can also add additional items if I wanted to, and I can move them around. I also wanted to show you how I set up the form. So let's find the trainer finder form, which is here. Okay, and if we look at the last button, this is where we have our submit actions wired up to. And we can see I've added this new save to user settings submit action. And when you go add it, you just have to specify the area. And in this case, it was set to trainer finder form. And just to show you that that's the case, if I go back to the content, it saves it correctly. It's just when you open it, it doesn't show you the save value, but you actually can look inside the form. On that save to user settings, you can see the area set to trainer finder form. So what does that mean? That means if I come to here, I actually can go to my trainer finder form area, and you can see it returns JSON and shows this is what I last submitted. I can also look at my preferences, which we can see is already set to cooking. And these are pretty robust REST API. You can actually post values to update them as well. Like if I just wanted the visitor intent, I could do that and it comes back with cooking. But of course, that's not a good way to get at a user settings. What would really be helpful, and what I've actually done, is added a tab to the experience profile. So if we look at a visitor, let's see what I have. There's now a user settings tab, and you can see what I have for what that visitor has for all their visitor settings. The last thing I did want to show was the personalization rules. So going back to the experience editor. So we personalize this carousel. And let me just make sure I'm selecting the right thing. There's the carousel. And we can see there's this new setting where the current user has a user setting for area preferences and visitor intent that is equal to cooking. So it's pretty flexible that you can use the rules editor to target whatever area, whatever setting, and whatever comparison you want to different values based on form fields, based on that preferences list component, or your own custom components that leverage either the REST API or the Sitecore API. So that's set there to change it to the carousel. And then I also did something similar over here on this promo. And you can see it also has a cardio rule, so where you have used the trainer finder form and you have an exercise interest that's equal to cardio. and you can see it's even tracking how many visits are exposed to that rule. So that's it from a content author perspective. It makes it easy to just wire them into your forms. You can also use a preferences list component if you want to explicitly ask a visitor about what kind of settings they want, and have that kind of flow through, and then use personalization rules, use the experience profile to go see what people have done, and customize their experience based on that. Thanks.